Me, crazy Andrew, coming up thinking it's a good idea.
What do you do?
Buy some companies. Journey started with, how do you put, 1 + 1 = 3?
The biggest mistakes founders do.
Credible buyer. He's not a credible buyer.
How big was the team and how big was the target?
Forbes top 50.
Got it. What steps you take after the M&A? Welcome back to the show. Today we have our guest, Andrew Sobko, founder of Batch. It's who have took his company from zero to one of the fastest growing companies in America, which is included in top 3 of Inc. 5000 and number 1 in Financial Times. Andrew, thanks for joining our podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Andrew, let's talk about your M&A journey. What was your first deal? How that looks like?
Yeah, so I would say my M&A journey probably started 10 years ago.
Wow.
Probably was 6 years before I actually did my first deal.
Uh-huh.
And kind of go back with one of my first mentors, Patrick O'Mara, who was a former, he was a Wharton guy, and he used to own one of the most successful railroads in the country, which he sold over 15 to 20 years ago. And the M&A journey started with, how do you put, 1 + 1 = 3? That's always how it starts. And when I originally got excited about M&A, I was like, wow, this is, you can buy some companies, you can buy bigger companies than you are. And we started thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Then when I started my company, which was CDL, which became Batch in 2018, in 2020, we, again, had some interesting opportunities to potentially, either take some private equity money, maybe think about, public markets, and SPACs were super hot. So I started building a real pipeline of deals. Start thinking about the thesis, start thinking about, okay, which companies can we put together? That's when it's all started again. Originally, a lot of work before, for me, at the beginning, it was a rocket science. I'm still not sure if I know much about M&A, but I did a couple of interesting deals in the past, but so that's how it all started. And a lot of work, a lot of strategy, just constantly strategizing, how you put these companies together.
Why M&A then organic growth?
Because through M&A, if you do it successfully, and, I want to kind of go a little bit backwards about different cycles we're in. So again, 2019, 2022, there was a cycle about just growth at any cost. And people were just, again, focused on subsidizing. I was always the big believer in acquiring great relationships and great customer base instead of subsidizing. A lot of people just would lead with a price just to get the customer, and I've done it many, many times. And I have a million examples where we closed one of major Fortune 100 logos just by subsidizing, throwing them a really cheap price up front, executing for quite a bit of time, doing an excellent job. And that's how you start to get into some of those unique relationships. But again, timing is always different. And through M&A, I'm a big believer you can get significant scale. And again, it's all about also the story. What are you acquiring? How are you acquiring? What the customer base? What the strategic rationale? Now, I like to say it when you present, you're trying to raise money for M&A from investors, what that investment memo looks like. So that's how we approach M&A right now. Yeah.
When you did the first M&A acquisition, how big was your company? How big was the team? And how big was the target?
I think when we did the deal, which we ended up closing about 2.5 years ago now, we were approximately equal size companies. My company was at that moment was more sexy, some great tech, simplifying customer base, and was growing like crazy. The other company had more financial discipline. I like to say they had almost public market ready back office infrastructure, and they've been around for 15 years. And strategic rationale was, number one, cost of people in Jacksonville, Florida was half to what we typically pay in Chicago. They already had very robust back office, and the company had significant history and unique customer base around Southeast in America. Mm-hmm. So the rationale was, we put these two companies together where, again, we're approximately, at that moment, we're $100 million each in top line revenue, and you put these two companies together, you move back office, you take on at least, 20% synergies because of the back office and some of the operations, and you use what's better in each company.
So each company was 100 million, and how big was the team on each one?
I think, when we started and after, because every time you do an M&A deal, you want to kind of underwrite against synergies. So unfortunately, you go through the ref usually before you get the deal done, or like a couple of days after, or a couple of weeks after. I think we were like at that moment, like probably my team was around 150 people, and their team was around 120 people when we started.
How you merge these two companies, like culturally, like two separate cultures, people, because you're actually merging people, right? Like you're merging countries almost. Like
what I've learned through some of my last couple of deals. Number one, the most important M&A, it's like, how can you win like hearts and minds of people, which is very challenging, very difficult. Especially, again, different cultures, different cities. And, me being a younger guy and buying a company that's been around for a long time. They seasoned executive team, been around for a very long time, been around this industry for like, 40 plus years. It's difficult to win those hearts and minds. So it starts with, can you convince people it's a good idea?
Yeah.
So at the beginning, we did convince some executives, but it was very difficult to convince the rest of the team because for them, it was always like a threat. Just to kind of look on the other side perspective, these people work for this company 15 to 20 years and they pay their mortgages, they pay their car payments. That's like entire livelihood is in that company, their jobs.
Because you don't get to see them before you acquire a company, right?
I can talk about some thesis. We do always now, we interview top executives, so like a mid-level executives. We do like one-on-one interviews before we close on the deal. But like most of the people now, it's like usually it's like a pre-secretive project. Yeah. Same with the customers, you're not trying to tell them like, hey, I'm going to buy this company, I want to interview, because usually people panic. So you come through a perspective like, hey, we're advisors to the board, we're some consultants. Do you mind want to ask you some questions? But top level executives usually are aware of situation, what's happening. But there is never certainty of deal getting actually closed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why most of the sellers, they don't feel comfortable kind of like opening up and letting you speak to everybody, but because what if deal's not going to close? There are like a million examples where you think about to close a deal and the deal collapses. We had this, just recently. So winning hearts and minds is the most probably challenging part of M&A.
What steps you take after the M&A, after you close the deal? What do you do?
Mostly, it's more important what you do before you close on the deal. Then like after you close on the deal, you want to be in position to execute on the plan, or ideally, if you're planning to do some sort of RIF, you want to execute on the RIF, maybe have a previous management team, if they stay or they leave, to execute on it, so you come in with some positives. So if you enter into a deal, you close a deal, and then you announce, 20% reduction, people, it's challenging. It's challenging to convince the rest to believe it's a good idea, that whatever you guys are doing. So before the deal, we can talk about what we do before the deal, what we do after the deal. After the deal, you want to have basically a town hall. You announce on the transaction, and you just start kind of digging in and try to convince people, try to convince them you're better, their lives will be better, their lives will be stable. You can bring maybe something new to them. What we like to do, we always, start with people-wise, like some new benefits rollout. Uh-huh. Like, hey, yes, unfortunately, maybe we had to do this and this, but, if you announce some new benefits rollout, which are way better than you guys had just a few months ago, you should be able to convince some people. Mm-hmm. But again, it's still not guaranteed. There's a lot of risk in it.
So when you're making a deal, do you do that intuitionally, or you go by the numbers, or both, or you talk to mentors? How do you do that?
The way we do deals now and the way when I started, it was like two different things. When I was just getting started, was like more, I loved the hype, and I was like, oh, this company was really hot. Well, let's buy it. It's a great idea. We're going to have a lot of hype in the industry. People are going to love it. We're going to build a pretty big business. I was like more risk. I didn't understand the risk at all. Now it's totally different. So number one, what you typically do, how it all starts, you put a pro forma financial model. Uh-huh. That's how it all starts. You put an underwrite, whatever the SG&A reduction, you put this all into numbers, and you see on the numbers if you can make it work or not.
Yeah.
Typically, usually you can pretty easily just through the financial model. That's how it all starts. That's when you understand, okay, if this is gonna work or this never gonna work.
So you're basically merging two pro formas together.
Yeah, two pro formas together. You work together with the team, you look into all the pipelines of deals, and you see who's gonna stay, who's not. Number two, the most important thing is like org chart. There are many deals that, became either successful or not successful just simply on was the org chart messy or not. So if you can have a clean org chart, like before you usually do a deal, you understand like how it's all going to look like day after you close the deal.
Do you normally keep them separate or you merge?
No, you have to merge it. I'm now a huge believer. I made mistakes where we kept a lot of stuff separate historically. Now my personal belief and recommendation, you want to run as fast as you can, integrate the work chart, try to put it all under one brand if you can, as quick as possible. And now the most important also, like you need to combine some ERP systems, HR system, ERP system. I would say those two things are very important. And then operating system.
So the accounting system.
Accounting the most important, yeah.
You merge them.
It's like usually, if you do big deals, then same HR system. And what you will see, what I've seen, that people just used to operating at their normal way, even like my team, historically, my like legacy team. So when we push and they will work with some major HR system like ADP and some other one, and they'll tell you, no, it's going to take 6 months to merge this. It's going to be super difficult. But then you ask like simple questions. You challenge people. But what if we just start from scratch? What if we just became a client of yours today? Like, can't we just, onboard 200 people on this under HR? And usually it's yes. And same with everything else. Like, from NetSuite, if you use a NetSuite for your ERP side, they will come up with some complexity. They'll tell you it will be 7 to 9 month project or 12-month project. And I always like to challenge those timelines because, I just don't believe it. And when you challenge people, you get, of course, better results. So for me, again, some of my mistakes in previous deals, we did not move as fast as we should have. On all of my future deals, you want to execute, you have this plan. And then people say you always have post-deal, you have like a 100-day plan post-deal, and you want to have that plan done before you close on a transaction.
How many deals you have done so far, and what was the smallest and what was the largest?
So I would say like recently for Batch, we did, in the last 2.5 years, we did like 2 deals. Mm-hmm. So we completed this company in HTS in Florida, and we bought, which was one of our biggest deals, a company called Next. Next was, again, probably one of the most complicated deals. It felt like it was, $10 billion transaction. We had 7 largest law firms in the country representing us. We had the deal was sponsored by Brookfield.
Why was it complex? Cap table? Or?
The cap table started with the cap table. So the cap table on the next side was, the next transaction before it was announced, it started 2 years before it happened. It started with simple, me, crazy Andrew, coming up thinking it's a good idea, reaching out to Goldman Sachs investment banking team and asking like, hey, what do you think about this deal? Can you introduce me to the decision makers? That's how it all started. And when it starts, typically, you're just conversational. People don't really trust each other. They're like, it's another guy. I'm not sure he's a credible buyer. He's not a credible buyer. And you just start with some sort of relationship, right? Then over time, people usually, unless you start spending money on the deal, people don't still take you very seriously. So the pivotal moment of that deal was when we hired an investment bank, which was in Oppenheimer. We hired one of the top law firms to represent us on the deal. And that's when people started paying attention. Even though it's still, they on their side were trying to find some other options for themselves. And me on my side, you never have certainty. You put some effort, you put a lot of money into a deal, and there's still no certainty the deal's going to get closed. So that just, again, the start of complexity. Then 6 months before deal closes, so that's when we submitted an LOI. We asked for exclusivity. We finally agreed on exclusivity after like 60 days of negotiation on LOI. And that's when you start diving in. And then you do like some basic work. Both sides usually do some work on both sides. But if you have a real bank representing you, which means, you spend the money, people kind of start opening up and you have some sort of institutional representation. That's kind of like usually a pivotal moment in the deal. And then what you do, you want to basically move as fast as possible into signing stock purchase agreement, SPA agreements. Uh-huh. And that is still far away from closing when you sign the SPA. Me at the beginning, a long time ago, I thought when we signed SPA, like this is sort of a done deal. But in that particular transaction, we signed an SPA in November and the deal ended up closing mid-February. So you still have, November, December, January, February, like almost like, 4 months of work, even though SPA is signed, most of the stuff already figured out in SPA, and it's still not closing. That was just like one of probably 1,000 complexities in that deal, like how it all just started.
Then you have a tech, probably.
Then you have a tech, you do the diligence, you think about how you're going to merge this, who's going to run it, which team's going to run it. Again, you go back to the work chart. You see how it's all going to look like day after you close on the deal. But typically, in that particular transaction was, we were also acquiring very hot company. We acquiring $200 million of paid-in capital into a technology stack. The company before we acquired raised over $275 million in cash raised.
So Next raised
275 before we acquired it. So the cap table was completely messy. There were a lot of secondaries done. So
how much you purchased for?
It's kind of confidential, but it was roughly around, let's say, between 100 to 200 million.
Got it.
That was purchase price.
You got a really good deal.
So yeah, we got a deal.
Yeah, intuitionally, what you thought is going to work out, and what worked out well, what didn't work out on that.
We knew that there were a lot of cash went into technology stack. They had some very well-known people that were part of Google Maps team and PayPal team building the tech, long time spent building the tech. But we thought that some of those people that were part of it, they didn't really understand the industry well. Some of the technology that was built, we were unsure. Mm-hmm. And when you do again you never fully understand unless you're fully under the hood. So you can show demos and there's demo environments, but it's still unknown. So after closing the deal, the technology was better than we thought, and the business side was in a way worse shape than we thought. That's the best way to say it.
Got it.
Technology, we got very lucky. It was way better than we thought. We ever thought that was there.
Yeah.
But the business was way more challenged. And again, we bought the business, which was burning 50 million. Year prior to that, it was burning 80 million a year. Again, we were in the middle of this, venture capital. People were just throwing money for growth at any cost. No one cared about the gross margins. They just cared about adding some new logos. Again, taking on a deal that losing 50 million is one of the most challenging jobs, probably in the world.
So basically, you merged 3 companies, right? CGL.
So we bought HCS before, and then we bought a few months later. We bought Next.
So basically, 3 companies.
3 companies got put
each
together,
making about 100 million each, right? Roughly. And now, instead of just being a brokerage, now you're more tech-enabled.
Yeah, we always had the technology. So what we historically had, I was always a big believer in simplifying customers' life, especially if you deal with this, Fortune 5,000 type of companies, low, you call it client base. And my thesis, all the technologies that we built from when we started in 2018 were simplifying user experience and simplifying pricing. How can you basically bring DoorDash experience for the most complicated piece of supply chain?
Yeah.
That was the thesis. You can order food from your favorite restaurant right through your app in less than 5 seconds. You're hungry and been doing something. My thesis were the same. How can you basically replicate that DoorDash experience for this very complex space around the ports and all the complexity around ports? How can you simplify pricing? So we originally built all of those user interfaces, shipper interfaces, and we digitized 1.1 million probabilities on the prices. That was interesting. What Next had, they had all of this kind of brain technology, software for the basically brain and this sort of marketplace and an app that was used by 30,000 independent drivers. Strategically, those 2 technologies made absolute sense. You have incredible user interfaces on one side that helps you continue closing some new Fortune 500 deals, and you bring all of this core backend automation, AI.
So Next had more of a truck drivers, right? Owner operators.
Yeah, it's still asset-light business model.
Got it. And their business model is kind of an Uberization kind of a thing?
Uberization, of ports.
Of ports, right?
Yeah.
They basically customer is more of a owner operators, and your customer...
No, it's still, it's kind of two-sided marketplace. So you have people that execute, right, which you see independent truckers, and on the other side, which I believe also incredibly important, historically said the most important, but sorry for that, it's your Fortune 5,000 client base.
Let's go back. How did you start with in brokerage? How you got into the industry?
Again, I have a very unique story. So again, when I moved to America, my entire mission in life was to go to work for Goldman Sachs.
Oh, wow.
I was from a very young age.
Now you're working with Goldman Sachs.
Now I'm working with Goldman Sachs, yeah. When I was very young, I was 100% on the mission coming to America. I'm going working for Goldman Sachs. And at the age of 17, 18, I was in Los Angeles, by an accident. And I had a friend in Chicago who offered me hey, do you want to come to Chicago, check it out? And I'm sure, Google pictures of Chicago, looks great. He's by the way, I have a friend who owns his own truck. He'll give you a free ride to Chicago.
And you came to Fresno, right?
I used to live in Fresno, California. And then I moved to LA for over the summer. I was in LA, I had nothing to do. Originally, when I moved to LA, I moved to Compton.
Oh, wow.
For me, it was LA. I didn't know it was Compton. I had no idea. I was, had no fear. Just a kid trying to figure out his life. It's a summertime in LA. So for 2 weeks, I was trying to figure out what to do in LA. And then I'm okay, this just sucks. It's not what I saw in the movies. And my buddy is hey, by the way, come to Chicago for a couple of weeks. Let's check it out. It's a beautiful city. It's Google in Chicago now, from Fresno to LA. Google Chicago is such a beautiful, downtown. I'm sure, why not? And So when he arranged me a ride with this independent driver, he started negotiating prices with his customer in front of me. And the guy, he didn't have like perfect English, but he was just, beating his customer up. And it was like Friday afternoon. And this guy squeezed additional $2,000 price from the same customer who called him like 2 hours earlier. Same client, same weight, same details. He just negotiated $2,000 extra spread. I'm like, you can make $2,000 spread just by negotiating? He's like, yeah, that's, it's Friday, it's about intuition. And, you have to feel, when people are desperate and, LA, it's a hot market now. I'm like, oh my God, you make $2,000 spread like for no logic, no reason, just by, hustling. And for me, I spent like 5 days with this guy and I'm like, wow, this is like the coolest thing ever. Like you make so much money just like, just by negotiating. I'm like, what if somebody can do what, and I was at that age, I already knew about, what NASDAQ did back whatever in the 80s with digitizing the stock market and the whole brokerage was disrupted. I'm like, somebody needs to do what NASDAQ did, whatever in the 80s to the stock market and bring it to this industry.
Yeah.
So I moved to Chicago, couldn't find a job, took me a couple of weeks, but then I found a job that basically I was hustling on the side, doing some other extra side jobs from pizza delivery and some other to survive. And I found a job in a logistics firm. And then within like a few months at the age of 18, I started my first company.
Wow.
And the first company was, the thesis was, let's digitize like rail pricing and rail network.
Railroad?
Rail, but take rail pricing, digitize it, similar example. And so that's how I got into industry, just by, again, thinking about how can you just simply thinking about digitizing the pricing, right?
Yeah.
Kind of simplifying the pricing and kind of giving more certainty into pricing. But then it's still, that NASDAQ experience is still kind of in the works. You still see a lot of even asset-light freight brokerage firms. Could be like even Uber Freight. No one still figured out how to build that NASDAQ of logistics. It's still far away from there. I think I'm very close.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention too much on it, but I think it's still possible how to do it and, how you can bring that sort of exchange-like mentality and create environment from trust, credibility, credible players, and certainty of truckers, like same way when you sell your stock, you're getting immediate liquidity. There's still a way of doing something similar in this industry.
You basically started as dispatching, right?
Yeah.
Between logics, then kind of you evolve and adding the teams. And how long it took you to get to the first acquisition?
It probably took me like 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
No.
Again, it's all my 10 years journey when I first learned about M&A from my first mentor, Patrick. And constantly strategizing with him, constantly doing this. And didn't know anything about M&A. I didn't know, first of all, now I like to say that, and we spoke about it before, it's all about the credibility. Credit, credibility, and character, like 3 C's, I like to say it. But the credibility, are you a credible buyer?
Yeah.
So at the beginning, I was definitely not a credible buyer. And over time, I think I became a credible buyer. So when people engage in a conversation with you, they feel like, he is a credible buyer. And it starts with, again, from all of your advisors around you, your teams, who you are, who's your backers, like everything else. It takes a long time and a long journey, but you learn.
When you merge a company, when you acquire a company, you normally use Stepan or you have a special after acquisition team who will do the integration?
So now we usually like to, I got very lucky, so I have like an excellent board of directors now who are very engaged and very involved with tremendous public market experience. So one of my board members, not going to mention his name, but he was part of probably the most successful rollups strategy in the public markets on Wall Street and generated, again, over 15 billion of shareholder value. So now we have like an excellent team. We have like, call it, 4 to 5 core people on the team side, board side, and we have a couple of guys representing us on the buy side. I have like one of my team members. He was my original, part of my investment team from Brookfield, and he joined us in his previous experience was at Goldman Sachs. So we start with, again, nonstop daily meetings, daily memos, starting with, again, from requests. At the beginning, again, it starts with you identifying a lot of targets and thinking about why this potentially makes sense. Talking to a lot of people and then convincing them, which is not easy because, you're dealing with some individuals that build their businesses for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And
they like, hand over to kids.
Or maybe some of them might not have a succession plan. Some of them might have some unrealistic, and they negotiate an LOI. Like they think that LOI is that final document, which is not.
Yeah.
Usually what I've seen that when you sign an LOI and then when you have a closing, everything looks completely different because people think to inflate the numbers when they tell you what it is. And you sort of, I highly recommend just sign an LOI, move forward, move as quick as possible, and then start digging in. But some people take, again, the first step very seriously.
Yeah.
So that's how it all starts. And again, and then when you sign an LOI, that's when you start digging in. So usually we do like daily, multiple times a day, daily meetings. We put somebody to be a lead, to be like a sort of project manager.
Mm-hmm.
We like to immediately hire right now a firm to help us on the buy side to do a QOV, quality of earnings on the buy side.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we do it right now. We don't want to gas and do our own work. It's easier just to bring like a professional team that can do it, and within like 4 weeks they basically do a QOV on the buy side.
Got
on
it.
your
Kind
on
of
your target.
external accounting firm, right?
It's external accounting term. Yeah. You bring them in and they're sort of independent. They know they still work for you, but they're like fully independent. So when the seller is fighting with you, like, hey, I told you it's 10 EBITDA, and the QV firm is like, no, it's 1.
Yeah.
And sort of you kind of help you bridge that relationship with the seller.
Got it. Makes sense.
And then you have again a team, great people. You starts with doing all of the diligence, from business diligence, HR, financial diligence, top executives, org charts, customers, interviewing some top executives. Also at the same time, lawyers started working with each other. What's very important in M&A to bring very good law firm that has experience in M&A. Because usually what I've seen that a lot of entrepreneurs in our space, they've been like so deep in it, and I was like also historically, and they're like, how am I gonna figure out this? What if this customer leaves? What if something doesn't work out here? Or what if this numbers were not right? Or this person leaves? Or he goes and starts a new company tomorrow? Like proper M&A law firms already know every potential complexity that could happen. It's already all being figured out.
Yeah.
So when you think it's no, I don't know, you feel like panicked. I see it a lot. What if this? What if this? There's reps and warranties. And that's when you still make a business decision. Do you want to, what kind of reps and warranties you negotiate with people? But it starts with an excellent M&A law firm. And when you have excellent M&A law firm, and usually what I've seen deals collapsing, if you have not sophisticated lawyers on the seller side.
Who's your best or preferable M&A firm?
I'd like to use all the big ones from Kirkland Ellis, DLA Piper, Latham, Cooley, Catton's good firm, and now we use on our current transaction we're working on Winston.
Yeah.
So usually like all of those, let's say top 7 firms in the country.
Yeah. Cool. You mentioned about you had board of directors. Did you came to this point yourself, or it was mandatory by after the merge or by investors?
If you're really serious about building a big business or potential exiting something, you need to be credible seller too, right? Because if you're not a credible seller, it's very difficult. People don't really trust you. They're not sure. So I started on the journey of building proper board of directors, 5-6 years ago.
When was it? What was the company revenue approximately at that time?
I think it was maybe we were on the way to 100, but we were not at 100 yet.
Yeah. So at that time you started actually putting your board together.
I already knew it, I will always want to bring some people that can be very helpful, strategic, and help me.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you get
bring investors, be more credible in front of investors, kind of all of those things.
Yeah, you have a quarterly meetings with them?
At this moment, I think we have weekly meetings, and I have some board members that I speak 10 times a day.
God, because you have so much changes happening.
Changes, but we're working constantly some deals. We're talking to some investors. There's some new stuff happening all the time. So you always want to be want to throw some ideas on someone else.
Yeah.
And not on someone else, but kind of discuss it, bounce it with each other and think about it.
What is the exit strategy?
So the exit strategy starts with timing. When you discuss about cycles, my industry post 2022 went through a significant down cycle, which again, but I've already been through 3 cycles before this. And you always want to time it right. In 2021, foolishly enough, I had some very interesting offers on the table. We actually had in 2022 an offer from Goldman Sachs. So in 2021, I had an offer to sell the business for cash. I decided, no, I'm up to something really big. Then in 2022, I ended up getting an offer from one of my dream banks. And I was like, wow, it was so good. And then when that deal did not close, get rescheduled, you were like, oh shit, I should have taken that offer in 21. So it's all about the timing this correctly. So it's this industry, while my industry went through a significant down cycle and valuations are, some cases, 50 to 80% to 90% down, you want to be, in our case, we want to be a buyer, not a seller.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on exit side, there's a lot, because again, we're dealing with a lot of potential. Again, we've executed on this big M&A roll-up strategy. There is a view where, public market makes sense. And the reason public market makes sense, so you can leverage your public equity and give some sellers, instead of just giving all of your cash, you can give them equity.
Yeah.
They believe in the story, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can do the similar thing when you're private equity-backed business and you have equity worth this, but people are usually more skeptical towards, what's your private valuation than from what's your public valuation is.
Right.
So that's how you convince. I think it's more for sellers, and then also you're getting, if you want to raise money for some deals, you have cheaper cost of capital if you're public. But again, it's all about back to timing. Like, can you time this right? And last 2-3 years were not the best timing for an exit, unless you're a AI company. And even though we were like one of the first AI companies in our space and building first AIs in the space, but still you have to be like, AI first business.
Now you're on buy stage, basically.
Now we're in the buy side, yeah.
Yeah, buy side. And what is your ideal targets?
100 million revenue plus, usually like a minimum threshold for us, and have to be some sort of stable businesses. Now we're looking for profitable businesses, profitable companies, but usually what I say, the bigger the better. Because the bigger the deal, the better, the easier to close, the easier to raise money for that particular deal.
And what type in the logistics?
We're looking for strategics again, either like we call it customer expansion, lane density expansion, geographical expansion, team, maybe getting some business development team that you currently don't have. There has to be some sort of strategic rationale value around this.
Yeah.
But now our view is, look, we have this great technology stack. We spent 8 years building it. We have 200 million of paid-in capital into this tech stack. And now you focus on buying revenues and putting revenues on top of your tech stack. And that's what makes us, kind of unique.
Multiplier of EBITDA that size, normally.
The challenge right now, when you go through down cycle, a lot of sellers are not comfortable just selling them because they might have depressed EBITDAs. Then maybe we're doing 10 million of EBITDA for 10 years before 2023.
Yeah.
And then 2023, their EBITDAs went to 2 or 4.
Yeah.
So you're trying to find that middle, somewhere to be in the middle, and you're trying to kind of convince sellers this is a good deal. There's a lot of upside. So like it's called, I call it financial engineering. It's very important and being very creative.
You
so
normally
you can
do 100% buyout or like 80-20, like you normally keep them?
Depends, but I think it's better just to do like a full buyout. But maybe have a seller join the team.
Yeah.
Be part of the management team. I like to call it, have somebody come as a, managing partner.
Yeah.
Kind of use one of those kind of like how big investment banks do, like, they have managing directors, managing partners. Give them those titles and have them help you build and execute on your strategy. And give them additional upside if they're up to it. But some people just, if people in this specific environment, if people just want to take 100% cash and be out, usually it's more risk. So the purchase prices are way less.
Yeah.
Then you can engineer it if somebody's, rolls some of the equity and you give them more upside if it all works out.
Do you normally have all the list of targets in your playbook somewhere? Or?
So my playbook on M&A targets is, most of my targets is kind of like my personal proprietary deal flow, which is, it sounds scary and bad, right? That just one guy runs with it. But now we have also my team running with us too. And we're just trying to meet as many potential sellers, have at least introductory meeting. I constantly work with all banks, mid-level, mid-size, big banks, and constantly just asking them, hey, how the environment looks like. Do you have any presentation? Can you give me an update? I just had a meeting on Friday with like one of top 3 banks in the country. And I think they're like the biggest bank. And just asking them like, hey, what do you think? What may be in the market? What are you hearing? Because usually there's always some rumors. Yeah. How maybe this company's not doing well. This guy might be interested. Maybe this private equity company owns it, but they already end of their private equity, their fund cycle. So that they have to sell maybe by end of this year. Maybe there's a ways to engineer it. And there could be some other bigger deals. You kind of hear rumors like there is like, I'm not going to mention name, but there is like one very well-known company that it's a very, very large logistics part of this kind of gig economy company. They have a big logistics arm. And I know it's not strategic, but it has a scale. Yeah. So in some cases you just want to, be aggressive, find somebody to represent you so you're credible and try to approach them to buy it, even though it could be like 10 times bigger than you are today. If one day you would exit, what is going to be the next play? Depends if I stay on board, right, or not, if whatever the exit is. Yeah. But like I personally have tons of energy and a lot of interest in innovative ideas. And I'm working on something very unique and interesting. I'll tell you later on, but tons of energy, tons of great ideas. I like sort of building kind of marketplace type of businesses where you take on something that asset heavy or balance sheet heavy, you don't really own it, and you build a basically simple distribution channel for the world, and you put it on top of it, and you just consolidate all of those assets all over the world and package this to Fortune 5,000.
Most of the business owners or founders normally exit with do not compete, right, in the industry.
For their particular industry.
Yeah, for that. Would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do that, then what is going to be the next industry?
Incredibly curious about a lot of different subjects, not just my current industry.
Yeah.
And now in this kind of age of AI, I think you can become like a subject matter expert pretty quickly. So you don't really need to go like very deep, right?
Yeah.
So you can get into like any other innovator, but I like to enter into something very interesting, very unique, and that you can kind of change the world and create something very unique and take on some major challenges in life.
Do you believe that running a business almost the same, like any business? Like as long as you know the structure.
Yeah, right now, like if you experience, founder.
Yeah.
And in my case, like I probably have 10 plus years of making like thousands of mistakes.
Yeah.
It's way easier. When you enter anything else, you can just move so fast from hiring to getting up to speed to everything else, bring credibility, creating teams, understanding, how to build the great teams of people from HR side, from financial side. And again, I like to say like, my most important jobs I like to work with and start something new is, of course, you need to have a great chief technology officer. Mm-hmm. You need to have I would say probably chief product officer more important at the beginning than chief technology officer. Great HR talent acquisition team and great FP&A, probably even more important than typical CFO.
Yeah.
And somebody who understands how to make money. That's usually what FP&A people do. Yeah. Where CFOs usually are more
working with external banks or bringing money in, right?
But not even
more understanding the model.
When they understand your business model properly, they can just tell you like, hey, if you make some moves here, here, you'll make extra 20 million EBITDA. Yeah. And that's usually like people on the FP&A side. They just take a bunch of data and they just figure out how to make money with it.
How big is your finance team?
I think about 20 people plus today. Yeah. It was bigger before.
Do you have like FP&A, CFO?
Oh yeah, we have an excellent FP&A and we have a CFO with public market experience.
What size do you think companies should add a CFO?
I think it's important to have somebody on that side pretty fast, but I would say, as soon as you have like 10 million plus in revenue, you need to have a CFO.
It can be fractional, correct? In the beginning, probably.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if you have, again, an excellent CFO who has that FP&A maybe experience, he can help you make money.
Yeah, I saw a lot of companies and business owners, founders are making a mistake of not having a strong financial leader in the company. Yeah. Even doing like 50, 60 million, then they collapse. Why? Because they don't have someone in the finance block really supporting them and giving them numbers. Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes founders do. Yeah. They try to save on that block, which is really crucial. Yeah.
A lot of founders still operate on cash basis, right?
Yeah.
GAAP.
Yeah.
And they think they maybe have today some money in bank account because, they're profitable, and in reality, they might not be. So I agree. It's very important to have a strong CFO.
What do you normally choose, like a months over or year-over-year growth or EBITDA?
Timing again. So we're in interesting cycle now. So now we're in the cycle where EBITDA is most important, right?
Yeah.
Growth is not that important anymore. It depends what you do. If you're an AI company, you want to grow again. It's very hot and you're venture-backed. If you're in sort of more stabilized type of business and been around for a long period of time now, EBITDA is the most important, of course.
Probably balance, right? I guess.
Probably balance.
Balance, yeah. Like rule of 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 10 or 20%.
Yeah, but in this particular environment, people just value more EBITDA. Story in EBITDA.
Yeah. Because that's why most of the private
growth, you can explain the growth.
Yeah.
EBITDA is very difficult to explain, even though you can still always explain what you're doing. And again, it all goes back to telling the story correctly.
What is on the company when you're buying, what is the minimum EBITDA you're looking for, like percentage-wise of the revenue?
Could be small if I believe that I can get that because of synergies. Yeah. Can get that EBITDA too. Again, depends. Like our industry is known for like 5 to 10% EBITDAs. Yeah. You might be buying the company with like 2, 3 EBITDA. It doesn't really matter. Usually if it's depressed EBITDA and you know what you're doing, you can increase it quickly. Mm-hmm. That's an opportunity for you, right? So that's what we're doing right now.
Would you be interested in buying like a fuel card companies or not?
It's not strategic rationale with us. No, nothing to do with our core business. Yeah.
Got it. You are mostly work with ports, right?
Ports. We basically would take on the service from, say, those Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah, it's not just typical logistic companies.
No. Walmarts of the world, Kroger's of the world, big boys.
Andrew, what technology is already transforming the logistic industry? What do you think about like integrating AI or robotics? And do you think robotics will replace the transportation in the future?
Number one, on the AI side, I'm a big believer that AI, solves some major problems. And again, back from automation, I like to say it, instead of hundreds or thousands of people analyzing some data, you have AI analyzing data for you. Mm-hmm. You basically apply math to solve problems. So unless you have like a clear solution, you don't just build, just don't bring in AI for the sake of bringing AI. You actually have, you're solving some big problem. So one of our tools that we built called like Next Best Move.ai. So we sell it to, let's say, all large Fortune 500 companies. And in many cases, let's say, when they need to make a decision and they internally have, again, hundreds of analysts, and there could be some very large company or thousands of analysts, how can we tell them what their next best decision should be on the logistics or global supply chain side within a second? Mm-hmm. How can we optimize, create, and so what we did, we built this, a very unique optimizer that kind of analyzing global supply chain network and tell them, hey, here's your next best 5 or 10 decisions. You still have a person making the final decision, mm-hmm. but you do need, again, so many people crunching the data for you. And then second, where AI works, AI, what we do, we focus on internal automation, of course. How can automations at scale work? How can you kind of, instead of having, again, a lot of operators making a lot of decisions and doing all of the busy work, how can potentially AI internally help you solve that? And then through our app that we built, we're trying to solve as many daily problems for those independent drivers, though, that their productivity goes up. So we have a lot of studies where we increase their productivity by 150% on a daily basis, which is significant. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my approach right now through technology. Like it should be, again, solving major problem for the customers, kind of simplifying their lives and increasing productivity.
What do you think is going to happen in 2030?
I think we're going to start seeing, as we see already a lot of autopilot, on the vehicle and the personal vehicle side is already growing. I think there will be some winners, but let's say if you look at specifically the logistics industry, I think that AI and the autonomous trucking is going to compete directly with the rail a lot for like a long haul. For the short haul, it might be a little bit challenging because again, it's still heavy, and then you still deal with all of the regulation. But I think finally we started making some progress on this side. Like back in 2016, when I originally started thinking about this, it was way too early. Now where AI is at today, it's very possible.
What is the biggest cost in the P&L of the industry, like labor and the gas?
Yeah, labor and gas usually. Yeah.
Labor, gas, what percentage?
I think it goes like, labor goes like 35%.
Yeah.
Gas goes about 35 to 40%.
Yeah.
And the rest you have, equipment and stuff.
So basically just imagine replacing that labor.
Yeah. And
like
maybe even you can save a lot on the gas if it's, electric trucks.
Yeah, at least between cities, right? Like big cities.
Yeah, for sure.
But within the city, then you can still have the human doing it. But within the big cities, you can have the autonomous drivers doing that.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge savings.
Huge savings, yeah.
Yeah. And probably replacing the gas with electricity now.
Probably, yeah. Let's see what, how Tesla project goes.
Yeah. They're basically replacing two things then.
Yeah.
Right?
They're replacing both.
Yeah, they're replacing
so it will be significant, cost cutting.
Yeah.
For companies over time.
Interesting. So most drivers can be jobless, in 10, 20 years?
Look, they might be able to get there some new jobs, some new industries, but you don't see that many new people joining the industry. You see people still kind of like a bit older. So they kind of exit the industry, retire. Again, you don't see any new people rushing to enter the industry. So I think it will be very natural.
Yeah.
Within next to 10, 15, 20 years. But then again, now on the technology side, you go back and you look into is infrastructure, electricity grid is ready for all of this?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have some interesting, I don't want to call it crisis, but interesting pivot mode in 2028. And we'll see if our electricity grid can handle all of this. And I see a lot of
All the
interesting
data
startups solving
center?
it. Yeah, from data center side and now you see from even like electric vehicles, will there be enough charging stations all over the place? And so I'm interested to see how that's going to get solved. So I think electricity, and now you see electricity trading become an interesting business where people kind of sell underutilized capacity. So that's I'm again very curious around that. And what kind of innovation
I
will come on
believe
that side.
because of the data centers, now we need twice more grid than before.
Well, we're gonna need even more.
Yeah, with the car
Yeah.
and like logistics might be even more.
Correct.
And the grid can handle.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and you saw maybe a few latest interviews from Elon and Sam Altman, where to double current, not just capacity but intelligence of our AI today, to double it, to increase it, maybe like double it or increase it 10x, you need to 10x your GPU capacity.
Yeah.
And which is very challenging. That AI infrastructure is becoming a very interesting space, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen.
Now it's more a personal question, like about your business philosophy and your day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
Like how you plan your day, how you plan your week, months, I don't know.
It starts with, your stress management, right? So I usually plan my days, I wake up early. You want to be as, because all of our jobs are incredibly difficult. And I used to call it, it's like a war zone. You come every day and it's a war zone. And you have no idea where you're going to get hit and what's going to happen, but you're always in the crisis mode. So like one of my personal most interesting things what I've learned over the last, I would say probably 8 years in life, I learned to manage stress, and I start my day always with TM meditation. Like I go to the gym at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then at 6 o'clock I try to do TM, which is probably one of the best things I found in life. And you are very stress resistant, and you can go through sort of incredibly calm and through any sort of stress during the day and just like normally react to any crisis that could happen to you. So I'm like very stress ready towards anything during the day. And then my personal trick in life, which is not the most healthiest habit, but I became well-known cigar smoker. So I do, usually around 1 or 2 p.m., I take a quick break, called my lunch break, and I smoke a quick cigar, and it calms me down even more, and you're just incredibly stress resistant.
Yeah.
That's how usually I start my day. So nothing can get me through the day.
How you plan your year or like quarters?
I'm not sure if I'm like planning this. We always have a budget. You start with a budget, but there's so much unknown, and because we're in active M&A mode.
Yeah.
We over the last 12 months we worked on 2 very unique, very large M&A transactions. So like one of the deals we worked for like 9 months this year. Actually started like end of last year and rolled into this year, and we ended up getting outbidded by one of our competitors at the end. That was like incredible transformational acquisition that we're going to add like over 200 million EBITDA to our business. So when you work on those type of deals, right, how do you manage? We just focus on trying to get the deals done, trying to raise money, constantly meeting with the boards, constantly, hustling. I took like over 100 flights just for that deal. Yeah. And we end up losing the deal. So, if you say like, you're like, we were convinced we were planning the deal's going to get closed. Then you lose it, and, it could get into your head. And you learn that even those type of situations where you feel like you get in it, you're like very certain and something doesn't work out your way, you immediately try to pivot and you find a new solution. You find a way to get some energy because, your team loses energy, and it usually look on your founder. If the founder gives up, the entire team worked on this big deal. It was so transformational for so long time. We ended up raising a lot of money for that particular transaction, and we couldn't use it. Yeah, because usually it was specific towards that particular transaction. So how can you plan? And then you pivot and you find another quick deal that for whatever reason has an emergency and urgency, and you move really fast. You're trying to close the other deal. So my approach again, be very optimistic. You move as fast as possible, like with tremendous speed. Yeah. Because I had a couple of times that I was like slow, too slow on some transactions, and I'm incredibly convinced, like moving really, really fast. Even you make mistakes, but you just make faster decisions and move faster. So
what helps you to make those fast decisions?
I'm naturally that way. Again, my board I have like a very conservative board of directors, which usually, again, more conservative and they want to think stuff through. Well, if you have I actually had a meeting with one of my, call it, mentors and partners that we worked on a deal, and he was on the opposite side, who's incredibly successful. He built one of the most, say, top 2 of the most successful private equity businesses in the world. Very well-known guy. So and we had the conversation, how creative we were towards our last transaction, even though we didn't close, but we just post the deal we were through analysis. And we're discussing, when people get older in life, they become very sort of risk averse.
Yes.
I also got older quite a bit, and I made millions of mistakes, and you should have put me in a position where I became sort of more risk averse, and I do understand already way more risks. This colleague, he said that, Andrew, it's a good thing, it could be a bad thing. You don't understand the risk. You're just you're such a big risk taker. So if I'm seeing something big, I'll take a huge risk. I'll put tremendous amount of energy and effort into it, tremendous amount of creativity, and I will just run with this. Hopefully, my team will help me to figure this all out. But when you have a good team, kind of cleaning up behind you, and you move really, really fast, I'm convinced moving faster is still better than slowing it down. Because in my career, again, I had some transformational deals collapse because we did not move fast enough.
What does the support system looks like? Like, who supports you? Besides the board?
Yeah,
your
wife helps me. I don't have a chief of staff. My chief of staff experience, and again, some people got lucky, but when I had my very first company, I think it was 10 years ago, I thought I was very smart and I needed this because everyone has an assistant, so I hired an assistant. And I had to spend more energy thinking about what kind of jobs and tasks to give her because it was too stressful. She was just sitting doing nothing. So I had to think twice, and I'm like, oh my God, that was so stressful. So my experience having some sort of chief of staff or assistants were difficult. So now I just do it faster myself. I always overbook myself, which is impossible. If you have an assistant, it's impossible to do overbook, and I maybe a little bit stressed out. I learned how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But that's how I became hyper productive. Because even when I travel to some city and I might have one meeting in San Francisco or next week, and I try to book 6 other meetings. And I stretch it to impossible, but I always pull it off.
Got it. Interesting. And you still go to office, right? Every day?
Every day I go to the office outside of when I travel. I go to work on Saturdays, and I like to work 6 days a week. And Sundays I usually kind of more reading books and strategically thinking about some new ideas. Which usually some of my best ideas I came up with on Sunday during reading some interesting books.
Yeah. And Saturdays you work yourself, or you have some other teams members?
I have some team members coming in, but usually I like to go to the gym and just calmly sitting and just catching up on emails and thinking about stuff.
How many books you read per year?
I don't know. I used to read way more, but now it's sometimes what I've learned when I read a book and something gets too boring, I just learn to move on quickly.
Yeah.
It's I'm not getting caught up on something that just demotivates me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't finish books, but I definitely buy 50 to 100 books a year, and I don't read them all, but I just constantly collect some interesting books, and then whatever I'm in the mood for.
Yeah. How do you find mentors?
It started with when you are one of my dear friends, Charlie. Unfortunately, whatever happened to him.
Yes.
When we were both young, we both had this thesis. When you're young and you come to somebody older and you actually, with no agenda, come and ask for a piece of advice, they will always give it to you. Now, Steve Jobs, there is a famous story when he was a kid, 11, 12, I don't remember how old he was, when he called the CEO of HP and asked for some parts. And he just gave it to him. He just called him. He just asked. So I'm a big believer just in asking people. So for a very long time, since I'm very young, I've been lucky and fortunate enough meeting some incredible people. Some of the most successful, let's say Forbes top 50 entrepreneurs in the world. And it always starts with, I had always this rule from a very young age, when I meet somebody important enough, just ask for a coffee. In the worst case, I will say no. Either yes or no. I hate maybe. So I've been fortunate enough just ask without agenda, without asking for any money, just meeting phenomenal people and asking them I would love to get your piece of advice. One of my last deals I worked on, I ran into randomly in Los Angeles at the hotel, I ran into Henry Kravis, who's the founder of KKR. And I just came to Henry and I asked him, Henry, would you mind if I can buy you a coffee? I would love to ask you for advice. I'm working on this and this deal. And he asked me some questions Andrew, tell me what do you do? So I explained to him. He invited me to his office. And my last deal, I was breaking down and all my investment memos that we were presenting to investors and the model. And we worked with him on the deal.
Wow.
So I'm constantly meeting some similar level of individuals from very young age. So again, back when you were young, easier when you would nicely actually from your heart come and ask for advice. Nothing, no agenda, and you try to do something for people. So I see a lot of people sort of like, they're just trying to get something from you quickly. They try to, some randomly people just, I'll come and ask you for money, I'll invest. I don't do this kind of stuff. I just, just come in asking for like, hey, I'm working on this and this transaction. And a couple of years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago, I ran into George Lehman, who's the founder of 3G Capital, and Charles Koch.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe told this story many times. And same story, very random, ran into by an accident, asked for coffee. They both agreed separately, within the same location. And I just asked like, hey, how can I build, ask George Lehman, George, how can I build a $1 billion company? And like after I explain him what I'm doing, he's like, stick in your industry, focus on technology.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded simple, but if you think about it more.
Yeah. What keeps you up at night right now?
Work related. I'm constantly thinking about some like next deal, something, what else I'm working on at that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So like one of my last deals I was working on, that usually kept me up at night. And I was just thinking about some solutions and coming up with some ideas. But usually like right now I just became, again, very stress resistant. So
yeah,
depends like what, family side or work side. But like I'm just, you do the best you can. You work very hard. You put a lot of energy into it and you will be fine.
Yeah. Do you have a magic number for exit, IPO, strategic buyer, or PE?
Like for this particular business or in general?
This particular business.
I do. We are working on a transaction right now that I cannot really disclose too much, but yeah.
Yeah. If you had to start over today with 1 million, and what business you would do and how you would do it?
AI infrastructure.
AI infrastructure?
Yeah.
And worst advice you ever got in M&A?
Not integrate businesses right away. Keep it separate.
Yeah.
My 100% experience. I lived it.
Today we had Andrew in our podcast, one of the fastest growing logistics and technology companies in logistics. Andrew, we discussed with Andrew about his first deal, about how he is doing the other deals, how actually merge multiple $100 million companies together, right? And how to build a $1 billion company, and what is what it takes to do this kind of deals. What does the support system looks like, and what kind of mentors and what kind of support system, like what investment bankers, like how you should really do that structure when you are doing these kind of big deals. Andrew, thanks for joining this podcast. It was really insightful. I have learned a lot personally, and I'm sure the other founders who are doing M&A is going to be really, it was interesting for them, and I'm sure they have learned a lot.
Thank you.
This.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you. Great.